All right, so today I'm going to be talking about the evolution of the motion picture. And this week I had the pleasure of going through a Paul Cantor lecture series where he talked about art and culture and mainly how it was developed through capitalism, which was the main theme. And one of the things he touched on was motion pictures. So I'm going to be going into kind of just breaking down what he said and reviewing it. So the points I'm going to be covering are movies compared to other forms of art, and what's unique and what's similar compared to things like painting, um, music, things like that. The growth of the film industry and how it's changed over time, and the cultural impact of it. And one of the unique things about motion picture and why I chose it is because it happened so recently, so we can see its growth and see how it changed things still, unlike things like painting or music, which have been around for so long, where all we know is what's in the history books. So the first point, movies as art. So to begin with, movies are diverse. They have many people working on it. You have the sound crew, the film crew, the editors, the costume designers, more so now than back when they started. But because of that, it's hard to assign authorship, which is why when movies first came out, it took them a little while to be accepted as a form of art. And there's a man in France. He was a writer, director, screenwriter, producer named Francois Truffaut. I think I'm saying that right. But he was of the theory that if you have more than one author, then it's not an authentic, true piece of art. It has to be your movie, and you have to make it entirely for it to be considered authentic art. Personally, I disagree with that. I think because movies are diverse and they have so many people working on them, it makes the art better. And um, I don't think there's anything wrong with art working on art as a collective or as a group, because that makes it just that much better. Which goes on to my next point of commercial pressure, things like deadlines, budgets, feedback from the companies funding them. Movies are costly to produce, so there's a lot of commercial pressure. If your movie doesn't succeed, you might never make a movie again. So um, I think that's what makes movies great as a medium of art, because it makes that makes it competitive, and that makes everyone make movies. So it's better for the consumer. But one of the drawbacks of movies is they're short lived. A painting you can keep on your wall and look at every day. Music you can listen to all the time, but movies, they're kind of hard to go back and constantly consume. So, there's few movies that are worth rewatching, but I feel like most movies don't get rewatched. So that's one of the drawbacks, I think. Growth of the motion picture. So, it started out. Uh, it started before the 1920s when Edison made the video camera, but they weren't really established as an art form until silent movies became popular in the 1920s. And then in the 1930s, sound was developed. So movies with sound were often called talkies back then. And with that, new genres developed, such as musicals, horror, westerns, gangster films were also developed back then. And, through trial and error and technological developments, this is like any other form of art. This has made movies become what they are now, with advanced effects. And you know everyone thinks they know what it takes to make a hit, but one of the things Paul Cantor touched on is that it's hard to make a successful movie because it's dependent on the market. Other forms of art can be satisfying to just one person. You can make your money back by selling your painting, or you can make it back by selling your song, but movies have to be fulfilling. And just because it looks bland doesn't mean it is. One of the examples he used was Casablanca. So uh, apparently it was a disaster on set and everything, and everyone was rushing, but the movie turned out to be really good, and it's still regarded as one of the top movies of all time, according to critics. So that was interesting to me, that just because it looks planned doesn't mean it was planned, that even masterpieces look awful in the way they're produced. So cultural impacts. it's market driven due to costliness. Like I said, you have to make your money back on movies to keep making movies. So that makes it a consumer controlled market because you're directly voting on what movies you want to see with your dollars. So that makes it extremely hard to make a hit. So a lot of movies lose money, but that makes it way more competitive. So a lot of movies are being made in turn. So, and other things it did to culture. It brought books and classic stories from the past, and it brought them to life, and put them up, made them available to a wider audience to watch quickly. And it also inspired new mediums like TV series, video games, virtual reality, if we're talking about what it's like currently. And then eventually things like YouTube, Vine, like TikTok, things like that. Like now we all have a camera and we can make movies on our phone whenever we want. So, um, the evolution of this industry it's a great example of how capitalism can take over and create art and expand it and make it available to everyone. And that's one of the things that was touched on in the other lectures too. Many famous artists like Picasso and Shakespeare, they actually died very rich. So not all artists starve. So that was my review of the motion picture. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks.